Alright guys, it is me, El Trader Goo, coming at you again with a nice little weekly watch list that I will likely be looking at this week, right? So first one, as you guys can see here, is going to be Rumble. Rumble, as we all know, video sharing platform and cloud service provider, right? They just had earnings last week, right? Which was, I believe, Thursday is going to be the 8th. So with that, they did have a lot of good news with their earnings, right? As we know, they are a much smaller reporting company as well as a emerging growth company. Overall, in their press conference, they did state that um, investors should monitor closely in certain social media platforms such as Truth Social. Their CEO Chris Pawlowski, I hope I got that right, account, saying that in those certain platforms, they might get certain material, right? That might be helpful for certain companies such as ROM, maybe even as well as DJT, with it all sort of having a tie into it, right? So also another thing that I want to mention as well, Vanguard did file 13G April 30th. Major also thing that they did announce was major expansion with the Rumble wallet coming in quarter 3 of this year, right? With that being said, they did report the revenue increase of 34% for Q1 of this year, right? And with that being said, they also did get a price rating. So that being said, they got a price target of roughly $20, right? And as we can see here, we're roughly trading right around below those sub 10. So still a long way up to those 20 price target, right? If given, right? So overall, I do see this as a good investment, even long-term investment. So I will be looking to possibly getting into this long-term for the long run, right? Overall, seems like they do have good guidance coming. So overall, that is what I'm looking for here with this overall stock, right? So overall, go walk you guys through what I have drawn up here overall for me, right? So overall, we can see right around this red line that I have drawn up here. So you can see right around these 660s, right? 665s, as we can see, held up pretty nicely on our daily time frame, right? And if we go further out, we can see how that area has been also as well targeted in the past, either bouncing, rejecting, whatever it may have been, right? As you can see, it's just been holding right around that 200 EMA, right? And now that we're coming into today, what can we see over the past couple of days, right? From like around March, we can see that right around March, roughly just trading well below that 200 EMA, right? Going up until that earnings day, right? So ideally what we're going to be looking for going into this week is going to be a continuation here higher, right? We can see even on our indicator here, the MACD and RSI, how we slowly have just been, buyers have just been slowly buying this up, right? So just slowly pushing it up. Earnings gave buyers that extra boost of confidence to, okay, seems like this stock has positive guidance for the future, right? Revenue was good Q1. So what is stopping this from going higher, right? So of course, that's something that we're going to be looking for here. If we can start to and stay trading above our 200 EMA, that's roughly going to be a very good entry for me, right? So that's something that I will be looking at getting. If I can get in under these sub 10s, for me, that is a gift of an entry for the long run to the upside, right? If we can in the future, even sometime into the year, reach a even near to that 20 price target, we can go ahead and reach even these highs from close to last year. What is this going to be? Roughly the 26th, right? So last year, December 26th, 24, 1740 was that high, right? So if we can get anywhere near there and an entry of under $10, that is almost a 7 to 8 point um, profit per share, right? So that that's very good with their guidance, as I mentioned earlier. Very good for me. So I will be looking to load up on this for the long term. Like I mentioned, anything under sub 10s for me is generally pretty good. We can see as well here, as I put up that line right there, we can see how roughly there is where we're seeing, right? So we know that if we start to break above this, we might see buyers starting to definitely start to push this up into my other areas of levels that I've drawn up here, up into this 12 20s roughly, and 1420s up here, right? So if we start to reach these levels and start to break all those levels, I believe we can definitely go ahead and reach these highs of those 1740s in the future coming, guys. So that's something that I'm definitely looking for. Even if we look at our 1 hour time frame, we can see how the 1 hour time frame, based off Friday's jump, right? We can see nice little pop up, nice little rally. We opened up right around these 8s, right? Boom, pushed up all the way, hitting the high up 1030s, right? Held all the way up, and we're holding, right? So that's something that we're going to be looking for into Monday. If we're going to see continuation here, or are we going to see a nice little pullback? So roughly, if we start to break below these 920s, that is something where I would like to see us possibly get down into these 08s or these $8 roughly. And if we do go and reach those $8 range, that's gladly will be more better entry than roughly around these 9s. But if we do get somewhere around here, so that's what I'm looking for this week. If we break below these 920s, go down here into these 08s to load up, or we're gonna hold here, get a nice little entry, and if we do start to break, just average down, right? So roughly overall long term for me. Now if you're looking for to play like options, right, you could ideally play those options, but be just carefully do manage those options throughout the week, right? And we can see here on the 50-minute time frame as well, looks like it's nicely holding up, right? So if we're looking for a continuation going into Monday, we don't really have much news going on, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see certain stocks just continuation from Friday's rally, right? So Friday's certain stocks, pushed up higher, so that's something I'm going to be looking for. So here, that's definitely areas that we're looking for, right? If we can start to break above these areas, that is something that I'm looking for here. You can see that overall smaller time frames seem to be holding up, right? So we want to see here, we can see overall we hit that high, then we started to stair step lower, right? But definitely something to watch here. Those, you want to see roughly these 9s hold and rumble. If these 9s can hold, I would definitely say that roughly around those 10-1050s area to go test Friday's high would be a nice little call area. But if we start to break below those 9s, start to look for puts ideally. So let's go ahead and jump into my next one. So my next one's going to be also something that I do have in my RIA, which is going to be Bank of America. Now, Bank of America overall just has been pushing higher and higher, right? Ever since we hit this low right around, what is it, April 9th, we can see how those 33s roughly held around there, right? So we can see based off that wick, we wicked down there into those 33s, held. So we can see trending up higher, right? So let's go ahead and draw a nice little trend up here. Right? So we can see our trend line, right? But also one thing that I'm also watching is, so I'm watching for two possible scenarios, because, so we can go either here, right? So we can see possible rising wedge, right? So it's two things that we're watching for, right? overall, this is going to be a call and put scenario, right? So if we start to break above this 42.15, 42.20s, you can look for calls to target roughly this high around here, which is going to be that 43.50 area, right? So roughly almost a dollar move, right? That we're going to be looking for calls to the upside if we do break this area of where you guys can see that blue line, roughly those 42.20s area to the upside. But also, if this does play out as a rising wedge, we have to go into smaller time frames to be able to identify what areas are we going to be looking to break, right? So if we can see here, based off our 1 hour time frame, let's go ahead. Remember, all this we have to analyze based off weekly prep, right? So this is something that we're watching, right? So those 41, 50, 60 areas, that's something that we're going to be watching going into Monday, because if we break below that area, we know that we're most likely going to target back into 40, 50s roughly, because we can see based off this area, that is where we basically consolidate, right? We just see price action just bouncing in until right here, pre-market, gave that pop up. Then we got into a next area, right? So there we have a next area, a level, that whatever you might want to call it, where now that's holding, right? So we can see how these areas is something that we're going to be looking for based off if we break to the downside. So we break below 41.60s, then I'm looking for something for puts down up into these 40.50s area, right? So same thing, almost a 1 point move either way for Bank of America on weekly, right? Weekly watch list here for those both scenarios. Now, last one that I'm going to go over is going to be Roblox. Now, Roblox, as we all know, now if you've got a kid, you know Roblox, right? Overall, something that we can see, Roblox has just been emerging, has been doing great as an overall company and pushing higher, right? So overall from here, last year, roughly May 10th, right? So that's almost a year from now, right? So we can see how from last year of May 10th up until today, Sunday, May 11th, we have pushed up higher, giving investors a nice return in just about a year, right? So just imagine, right? Let's say you bought this bottom last year, right? Roughly around these 30s. And we see we peaked up a high up until this year for that earnings that we had for them to report that Q4, right? That Q4 of last year, right? So with that high for that earnings, that peak, that was almost a 6 month, 7 month return, right? Of more than double your entry. If you got in 30, more than double of what you would have got in return, right? So we can see even on the daily time frame, overall, we have just been bouncing. What is one thing that we can notice based off our daily time frame? We can notice how this 200 EMA right around over here has just been areas of bounce, right? Even over here, just bouncing, bouncing, bounce, and then here slightly breaking below, but staying with our daily trend line, right? Going higher, right? So we know that the overall market for, or market structure for the Roblox has just been continuously higher and higher, right? As long as it stays within this trend, respecting the 200 EMA, we are just noticing higher moves. Now, what we're looking for is, we're going to be ideally looking for almost the same thing here. We can watch this for calls and puts for both scenarios. Now, let me go ahead and give you guys what basically are going to be my levels that I'm looking for on this. So, based off my daily time frame, now we're going to go ahead and walk you through what I've got drawn up here, right? So, this rectangle that I've drawn up here is going to be roughly a respectable area, because this area is going to be an area where if we go all the way back, look here, this is roughly where Roblox IPO'd that, right? Roughly back in 2021, they IPO'd, right? What was that IPO opening price? That opening, sorry, that opening IPO price was 64.50, right? Then the following days, we can see how that high, roughly around those 79s, right? Is going to be within those IPO days highs, right? So as of right now, we're just trading within that opening price of the IPO, right? You can see here, boom, boom, then broke up, right? So we know that right around this area, there is some type of orders in there, right? So you can see here, held, here, rejection. So all this is something that we're watching going into this week. We're watching to see, can we start to break above this IPO price range, right? So with that being said, what I'm looking for is I would love to see us start to break above roughly these 73s, right? You can see here. Even if we start to break above these 72.50s, that's a good starter for the calls to the upside, which we will be targeting this high first, right? We're targeting this high first because that is the first previous high that we are getting, right? Which is going to be roughly from May 2nd, right? So that's going to be our first high that we're going to be targeting. It's going to be that 74.24 for calls if we do start to break above that 72.50/60 area, right? Now, if you're looking for longer time frames, for instead of a weekly, you could play those 2 weeks out. 2 weeks out to play these 75 calls, right? 75 calls, depending on how they open tomorrow. We know they're not going to be that same price, right? So just giving you guys some ideas based off what I am seeing. Now, another thing, if we start to break below roughly these 69s, guys, these 69s, 70s is an area we're watching for downside. If we start to break below that, we are targeting these wicks, right? This wick down here where we see liquidity, right? If we go into a smaller time frame, we're going to see same thing, right? So we see this is where we want to go ahead and chase. If we start to break below roughly around those 70s, roughly that's 69.70s area, right? So we can see how this wick is lining almost identically with the body from over here, right? So if we start to break below that, this 69, and then fully break below the 69.70, that's going to be nice little confirmation to have sellers come in, step in, and chase this wick to the downside. So right there, we're going to be chasing those. We're not going to be chasing. I don't want to say that. We're going to be looking for or targeting these 68, even 69 puts, right? For weekly, right? So those two areas is something I'm looking for Roblox overall, right? We can see here how that area is held, right? So that's what we're looking for here on Roblox overall. Ideally, is something that we will be looking for. Those are just 3 things that I'm looking for. Now, with that, let me go ahead and give you guys almost same thing here for M&Q, right? For my futures traders, right? So something I'm looking for here at 6 p.m. open. Now, we know that we was having talks about the China talk, right? China deal, right? So as far as we know, everything's air quotes have been great, right? So hopefully, if that's the case, I'm looking for these futures markets to maybe, if given, gap up, right? Gap up above this high, right? Above this previous high that we've seen here, right? Start to go and test up higher, right? Because based off that, what can we see over here? That same thing. We know there is orders here. Look, you see how these areas play very important areas. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to see, okay, will we gap up into this area? Or are we going to reject that 200 EMA, right? As we can see on the daily time frame. But with the whole China talks supposedly being good, that's something that I'm looking for to hopefully gap up. But same thing, we could be, something. Always want to be precautious of things because things may not always seem as they seem, right? Yeah, we do have a nice little trim to the upside, but we also have to just be cautious of things. Right? So we can either go up or we can. So always two scenarios, right? Remember, just my perspective, guys. Something that we were looking for. Remember that these levels always will adjust to what you're looking for. So we can see here. Ideally, I want to see us break above these areas. This 20, what is this? 23.35s, right? So if we can gap above that, then that may signal that we are bullish going into Monday's opening for New York session, right? But if we start to gap below this 20,068, then we might be bearish, right? So remember, Monday, it's not really a lot going on, rather news or data, numbers, anything. So that's something that I'm looking for. So always be watching areas, right? Remember that whatever I say might be changed, adjusted to depending how we open and all this. Just ideas that I am giving you guys here. So always remember, stay green. Have a great week of this week coming up. And always secure profits. Let the market tell you what to do, guys. Happy Sunday, happy Mother's Day, and hope you guys have a great evening.